Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
So if you are just joining and haven't been with us for a little bit, we are unpacking this text composed by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and Venerable Thubten Chodron, and it's on Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha nature. And right now we're in the section on Samsara, the fun part, which is all about suffering and the very unsatisfactory nature of this existence we have. And so we're unpacking the 4 attributes of the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha. Suffering is how it's often translated, but it's not a very good translation. Really, unsatisfactoriness is really, I think, probably the closest to dukkha. That, because, a lot of times we don't feel like we're suffering. I feel pretty comfortable right now. Actually, I'm in a good, comfortable chair. Body's okay. Got some hot water here, But then with all of this, there's still an unsatisfactoriness, which we're going to unpack in this second attribute. Last week, we covered impermanence. So we suffer a lot trying to make things permanent that are impermanent. And I think we had a pretty rich discussion last week around that. We don't want things to change. We certainly don't want I was going to say we certainly don't want our bodies to change, but a lot of times we do, right? Yeah, I want to get a little healthier, or sometimes, I want to get out of pain, so I want to change in that way. Other times I might be pretty fit. I mean, I wouldn't mind having the body I had back when I was 40, it's pretty good. Or my eyesight, for that matter. I remember going in for physical when I was 40. I was really healthy, I was fit, and my eyesight was 20/20. And they're like, wow, 20/20 still. That's not the case anymore. So impermanence, right? The towns we live in change, the environments change. I mean, we can just look at change all around us. And as soon as we find something that's, this is the way we want it, well, it's not going to last. So there's this unsatisfactoriness with that. Everything's in a constant change. And there's a lot of struggle when we don't like it. And then the other struggle is how we try to prevent it, and so often we'll try to find stability and instability in ways that it doesn't exist. And there's a lot of worry and fear around that, a lot of suffering around preservation. So we had I think a pretty good discussion on that. And now we're going to get into the very nature of dukkha in this second attribute, which will pop up. Oops, that's not what I wanted to pop up. That was the refuge paragraph. Pop up the text. There we go. So the second attribute of the true dukkha, the first noble truth, is the unsatisfactory by nature, the aggregates. So the aggregates, once again, are these 5 composites that make us up as the being that we perceive ourselves to be. Our body's one aggregate. Our feelings are an aggregate. Our discriminating factors are an aggregate. Our consciousness. These 5 things get put together, and suddenly there's this thing that I think is John. And how I experience all this then is unfortunately contaminated. It's not pure. I don't see and experience things as they are. Is the big issue. So we're going to kind of look at how we do that. But I was thinking before we go into this, believe it or not, talking about suffering and struggle and discomfort isn't always that fun. it's not very inspiring sometimes. I sit there and think, okay, so yeah, this is all contaminated. Nothing out there is going to give you any lasting happiness, and you're going to age, get sick, and die. But the reason we focus on that is so that we don't suffer. The whole point is it's unnecessary. If we can identify how we misapprehend this existence and these experiences in my life, then I'm going to eliminate the causes of my suffering around it. So it's actually something to be very inspired by. But if I don't know what the problem is, if I don't, it's hard to get a diagnosis. It's hard to apply the cure. So we're starting at a point where it's just saying how, basically delusional we are. And but then there'll be some medicine to improve that. So let me bring that back up. So the aggregates are unsatisfactory by nature because they're under the control of afflictions and karma. So those are the two base issues in our lives, afflictions and karma. So we have karmic seeds, and that karma is playing out in our lives. But we also have mental, emotional afflictions, right? So anger, frustration, resentment, jealousy, afflicted states of mind. And they're seeds of these afflictions, which we can actually work with pretty tangibly. If I have a belief that this is the source of my happiness, that job or this person, I'm going to have a lot of affliction because I'm going to want that person to want me. I'm going to want that person to be in my life at all times, or I'm going to want this job. If I don't have this job, I'm going to not feel so good. Or if I do get this job, then I want to keep this job. So you can see a lot of suffering just around a belief about the job or the person. But if I don't have that belief, if I recognize it's not so much the job, there's lots of jobs, but maybe this job would be helpful, then I'm not going to have so much affliction. Or if I recognize this person in my life is a valuable support to my life, but not going to be very valuable if I try to imprison them to me, right? Going to be a lot of problems. But recognize that they're valuable and maybe there's some potential for us to be together, maybe not. Then I'm going to suffer less. So if I remove the misguided belief about them being the source of your happiness, well, now I'm removing the afflictions that would arise from that belief. So working with the underlying beliefs, you can remove some of the mental emotional afflictions pretty quickly. Some of them not at all quick, because there's deep-rooted beliefs, but there's some that are pretty straightforward. For example, just a healthy diet. I could have a belief about something, learn something new about a new diet, do that, and suffer less. Okay, so karma and klesha. We're under this influence of karma and klesha, and that means that basically everything that we experience is subjective. What I'm experiencing is subjective. I'm seeing you, I'm seeing and experiencing you and the world I live in through my own layer of karma and klesha, through my own obscured experience. And we all have this, but it doesn't look that way. It looks like, we're all looking at the same screen, or, here's this computer and all that. But you all have a different relationship with this computer or that screen. All of you see a different John. You're all experiencing me differently. But that's not how it seems, right? We just kind of seem like there's an objective, measurable world out there. But if we recognize that how I'm experiencing you, whether I find you attractive or not attractive, funny, not funny, kind of a pain in the butt, or kind of cool to be around, or whatever, it's going to have a lot to do with me, not just you, and how I'm attending to you. So this is all sort of the lens through which I experience everything, and it's made up that what's obscured is the karma and the klesha. If that wasn't there, I'd experience myself in pure view, and I'll experience in pure view. So the goal of Buddhism is to remove that which obscures. All of Buddhism is just to live in reality, see things accurately. But we do have this. So as a result of having this, we're not going to see and relate to our experience very accurately sometimes. So how do we misperceive? Let's take a look at some of that. Sorry, I got a little pop-up here. Peter's having lots of fun here. Stop that share. There we go. Back. Okay, so believing what is unsatisfactory by nature, food, possessions, reputation, friends, relatives, our bodies, and so forth. Believing that this actual pleasure and happiness, right? That this is the source of it. Well, then we jump into a world of transitory pleasures expecting lasting joy. So a huge problem, right? In our quest to be happy, we're going to create a lot of suffering, as we keep talking about. In our desire and our quest for happiness, we actually become attached to the cause of our suffering because we believe that these things and events and circumstances and all that can provide us that lasting happiness. So we attach to them in a way that's pretty unhealthy. So believing that what is unsatisfactory by nature, food, possessions, reputation, friends, relatives, our bodies, and so forth, is actual pleasure and happiness, we jump into the world of transitory pleasures, expecting lasting joys. The key thing there's nothing wrong with transitory pleasures. Yeah, nothing wrong with those, as long as we know they're transitory pleasures. The issue is we think they're going to be the foundation of our lasting joy. So absolutely nothing wrong with pleasure, nothing wrong with enjoying good friends, good meals, taking vacations, having a nice thread count on your sheets, nothing wrong with that. Just know that that's all they are, temporary things of pleasure, which, by the way, don't last very long. Not long at all. And so just being clear about that. Sometimes people get caught up in, well, then I shouldn't have those things. And it's no. Enjoy them. Enjoy them. Be healthy, be well, give yourself a nice nurturing environment. Just know them for what they are and how they support you in living a life that's going to help you be fulfilled and joyful. How can they become conducive for lasting happiness instead of the source of it? Then we're in a much healthier frame of reference and a much clearer opportunity. So we don't want to go too far into one direction where we don't enjoy anything and just get really down to a bare minimum. And we don't want to be too caught up in, well, this is really what I need to be happy. Just find that good balanced ground. Viewing our bodies to be a source of great pleasure, we expend a great deal of effort to secure and experience sensual delights. In doing so, we consume more than our fair share of the earth's resources and spend a lot of time chasing illusions. In actuality, our bodies have constant aches and pains and are seldom comfortable for long. If we saw them more realistically, we would keep them healthy in order to use them to practice the Dharma. But we would not expect true happiness from them. So we have this body for, a limited time. If we really knew its value, well, we would use it wisely. And I'm glad they chose the word Dharma here. They didn't use Buddha Dharma. So Dharma is truth. Dharma is the nature of truth. And there's lots of Dharmas. And so we use our body to understand ourselves and our experience in a more truthful, accurate way. That'd be a good use of our body. But we might be using our body to, cultivate more attachments, chase more hedonic pleasure, and waste a lot of time and energy chasing happiness and things that can't give it. And then we may also indulge in, eating habits and other activities that are pretty unhealthy for our bodies. We'll indulge in sensual pleasures, and then what happens is the brain starts, hitting that dopamine. And then the body starts getting trained to a very unhealthy activity. And so even if I know better, I can't do better. Because, okay, I know this is healthy. Well, my brain's pretty sure, man, this is going to feel good. And so, we have this big struggle. If we actually knew how to take care of our bodies more, we would have the more natural reward system in balance, where we would get those nice little hits of dopamine, but still have an off button. We could have serotonin, a nice sense of contentment, executive function. So even our bodies are really important to work with this path, and our minds are going to be really affected by how we chase things and then associate that reward system with what we're doing. And we may find that our body is actually compulsively drawing us to unhealthy activities, even though our mind might know that's not how I want to live. It can be a big push-pull factor and a struggle. I mean, not that any of you can relate to that. I'm sure as soon as you have a healthy thought, set those New Year's resolutions, nail it, no problem, right? Well, for a week anyway. And then how those habits and that conditioning come back. A lot of that has to do with our bodies, the structure of the brain, the way that it's interacting with our mind. So if we really could understand how this works and understand the best use of this body and true sources of happiness and well-being, and have those accord more accurately, we'll just suffer a lot less. Go a little bit further here, then we'll pause. Contemplating that the objects, people, and activities that we see as enjoyable are actually unsatisfactory in nature because they are under the influence of afflictions and karma, remedies the distorted belief that they are a source of secure happiness. What we commonly call pleasure is actually a state where one discomfort has decreased and a newer discomfort is just beginning. There's a happy thought. Yeah. One way they explain this is what we often perceive as happiness is just a short absence of suffering. And they'll give a good explanation right here. For example, when we've been standing a long time, sitting brings a feeling of relief and pleasure, right? We're tired, we sit down. Oh, yeah. But slowly, the discomfort of sitting increases. Oops, thought I clicked that button. And after a while, we want to stand up and walk around. You notice when you just don't get in that equilibrium, standing too long, that becomes uncomfortable. Relief, sitting after a while becomes uncomfortable. Now I need to stand. This becomes uncomfortable. And then when we think about states of contentment that we may have, not just, pleasure. It's an interesting thing around pleasure. Pleasure feels good, obviously. That's why they call it pleasure. Dopamine releases. But your nervous system would break down. That's not comfortable for a long period of time. Contentment's different, right? Serenity, contentment, that's a little different. That's much easier on the system. That we could do for a little while. What's the longest we've ever felt content? And then how quickly does that move to discontent? And how often do you find content and go, man, I want to keep this. And now I'm worried about it. And so what they're pointing out is even in these states, that it's just moving from one to another. Our aggregates are subject to the three types of dukkha mentioned above. The dukkha of pain, which is physical and mental pain. The dukkha of change, in which pleasurable circumstances do not last. And the pervasive dukkha of conditioning, a body and mind conditioned by affliction and karmas. That's the underlying. This last one is the source of the first two. So if we weren't suffering from afflictions and karma, we wouldn't have these other two. I mean, that's the core root issue. Afflictions and karma condition our experiences, and without choice, our bodies fall ill, age, and die. Our minds are overwhelmed by disturbing emotions, such as despair and rage. Understanding that whatever is under the power of afflictions and karma cannot be a source of lasting joy, well, then we release unrealistic expectations and distance ourselves from the useless pursuit of clinging to samsaric pleasures. Instead, we direct our energy towards actualizing true cessations from suffering. We actually, we got this body, this life, these conditions, the environment we're in, everything is here. Let's use that to not suffer anymore. Let's actually cultivate lasting happiness, durable happiness, well-being, serenity. Let's focus on that instead of wasting a lot of time decorating our samsara prison with really nice things, which only provide momentary pleasure. If we see it that way, we're not going to waste a lot of time on that. So I'm going to just pause there, see if anyone has any thoughts or anything popping up. Which also gives me a chance for momentary pleasure. All right, Kurt.
John, hi everybody. Thanks. Would you just remind?
Hang on, Kurt. Let me turn up my volume here on so people here can hear you. Need to exit full screen. Volume. Okay, now we're good.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you in my sleep usually.
That's good.
That's how we know this thing works.
Giving you an opportunity to practice. Right. Would you remind? He just did a really good job of taking all the pleasure out of life.
Yeah, that's what we're here.
Remind me of what are we putting in its place again? I mean, I know I should know this.
What we're putting in its place is cultivating cessations of suffering. So, for example, keeping it real simple and real straightforward, because we like to be practical. Is there any event in your life that you couldn't be cultivating good ethics, more attention, or more wisdom? And that is the path to awakening. Ethics, concentration, those are the three higher trainings. So the Noble Eightfold Path has those three categories. So how about we engage in our activities with good ethics, with mindfulness, in ways that accord with reality and are wise and support a sense of lasting happiness and well-being. So if we use our time that way, then whether I'm at work or whether I'm grocery shopping or whether I'm doing the dishes and my mind wants to go off on, the next big adventure, and I go, well, I'm going to bring my mind to doing the dishes. Now I'm cultivating attention. Now I'm on the path to awakening. I'm practicing now. It's not just limited to my cushion. I'm washing dishes. I'm focused on washing dishes. Or I might even bring an attitude of what a gift it is to have some clean dishes and where they all came from. Now I'm cultivating merit and wisdom and thoughtfulness. So is our mind present and engaging with these activities, which could be quite pleasurable? You know, like I'm really willing at almost any time to share a piece of cherry pie with Sam. You and me, we could do that. I'm there for you. Okay. And that would be a pleasurable experience as long as it's not a whole pie. Right. And I could be doing that with friendship, with care and sharing. Now I'm not caught up in affliction. I'm engaging in kind, thoughtful sharing activity with a friend, which is pleasurable, as long as it's a good cherry pie. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think so.
I just gave you a way to engage in pleasure that creates a path of awakening.
Well, I see that. I mean, I see it happening in my life.
Huh?
Yeah, I see it happening in my life. I guess I just was thinking it's more of a mindset about how we see the things that we're doing. Right? That's what I heard you just say. It's more of a mindset about how we see the things we're doing, and not this thinking that what I'm doing is going to bring lasting happiness. I mean, I guess if I know that's not true, it's still okay to feel it's still okay to enjoy it. Seems like
well, it's important to enjoy it. I mean, do you think the Dalai Lama doesn't have joy?
Well, I'm not quite on the Dalai Lama's level yet. I'm just looking about how to get through the day.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that people in this path, it is joyful.
Right. And I guess my fear is I have to wait until I'm like the Dalai Lama to feel joy, right? Which is going to be.
Did you feel any joy today?
Yeah, well, not so much today, but most days, yeah. The answer is yes. So,
come on, man! Didn't you have a cup of tea this morning?
I've felt a lot of joy today, and I feel a ton of joy in the increasing walking this path. It's permeating my life, and I'm feeling more and more joy. So I can't escape it. I guess I don't even know why I'm talking. I'll just be quiet.
And so these are the things we get to work with, though, is that all of life is to be, utilized, and there's nothing to waste. And the difficult challenges are opportunities that we can actually sometimes just be joyfully engaged with, not in the sense that it's fun in the moment, but in the sense that I have the skills to deal with this today, and what an opportunity that is that I didn't used to. And I go back, and I know I've shared this with you many times, when I had to call my brother and let him know he's not invited to my other brother's memorial. Like, I'm the guy who had to do that. Is that a pleasurable event? No. But I also felt an honor that I was the one asked to do it, because they felt that I could deliver the message in a way that was meaningful. So there's even a sense of value around that, to do that. And then, as most of it, I also shared, it actually brought that brother and myself together. We have a better relationship than we've ever had. And that was a nice benefit. So even the things that are difficult don't have to be something we resist or feel bad about. They can be actually things that I can feel pretty good that I'm actually in a position to do them today, because there was a time clearly I was not. And so all of life is to be savored, whether it's the cherry pie, whether it's the difficult event, whether it's a ski run with a good friend, whether it's, taking the little kiddo for a walk or taking the dog out, throwing the ball. All of those can be a part of our journey, depending on not, you use the word mindset or perspective, which is attending to it in a way that is meaningful and in accordance with reality more. And so rather than have this be all esoteric, that's why I like a very simple thing. Whatever I'm attending to, am I doing it ethically? Okay, I'm practicing the path. Whatever I'm attending to, am I attending to it? Or is my mind somewhere else? Well, now I'm practicing concentration. Whatever I'm doing, am I attending to it in a way that understands interdependence and impermanence? Well, now I'm practicing wisdom. And so we can be cultivating the path in pretty much in everything we do, and we can be using our body and minds in those ways. Or we can be pretty caught up worrying about the future, and if this happens, then I'm going to be, the success I've always wanted to be, or if this happens, then, the lasting happiness is there, and, once I get this thing or that person, and now we're chasing all those things that can't provide us what we're seeking. And then the attachments to them become the attachments to the causes of our suffering while we seek for happiness. And that's the cycle we want to avoid. But it doesn't mean you don't enjoy a nice house, a good relationship, or walking the dog. Yeah.
My question is around, I guess, two terms that I'd love to explore a little bit more, or hear you define a little bit more. So the first one is affliction.
Mhm.
I think you did define it, but I still don't quite have my mind wrapped around, especially, the sentence around affliction and karma kind of being the source of the other two forms of dukkha. Could you say more about that? And then the second question is around ethics. It kind of brings to mind for me, well, it's like, well, whose ethics, which ethics? Because I think, I understand ethics as a system of morality.
Mhm.
And I wonder if there's any kind of easy, practical, tangible connection that you would make of like, what does good ethics mean?
Yeah, we have a top 10 list. Yeah. But yeah, just quickly with afflictions, anything that takes you out of clear peace of mind is now an afflicted state. So, and that could be seeking pleasure, could be euphoria in a sense, could be worry, could be fear. So technically an affliction is anything that's taken you out of this very clear equanimous.
Present moment.
Yeah. And so we're just filled with afflictions, right? So those afflictions arise from a misperception, constantly seeking, if this were different, then I'd be okay. Or if that was going to happen, then I'm not going to be okay. Or, so we're going to, the resentments, the anger, the frustration, and all of those mental afflictions are always going to arise from a misperception around the exaggerated view of that event or this world we're living in or the sense of self, which will come later. So out of that misunderstanding, my mind's, really grasping on to people, places, things, and events to be okay when maybe I'm already okay. What's taking me away from being present? So in Buddhism, the word klesha is what's translated as affliction. So everyone in samsara is contaminated in a sense by klesha, mental afflictions, based on misbeliefs, and karma. And karma is our conditioning, our habits, our tendencies, our conditioning that really limit our capacity. So as we purify karma, we have less of that conditioning, as we remove those kleshas, our view becomes much more clear, and we can do more things. So that's the whole path of Buddhism, is to remove the karma and klesha that prevent us from knowing our ultimate nature. We call it Buddha nature. Some people might call it your divine nature, or which is much more than this physical body. And so we're obscured. So it's removing those. And then just in terms of ethics, the Buddha doesn't have a judgmental, this is right and this is wrong. When we talk about virtue or non-virtue, these ethics, what we're talking about is what the Buddha basically said: these activities will result in suffering. These activities will result in more pleasurable experience. It's just the law of how things work out. So things are literally categorized by whether they create suffering or whether they create pleasure. That's all. So the top 10, and so all these people have heard this a million times, that's why I don't, well, it's been a ton of time, but there's a top 10 list, don't kill, right? That creates suffering. Don't steal, that creates suffering. And sexual misconduct, right? And that's going to create a lot of suffering. But they're not prescribing, like sexual conduct in the terms of whether it's gay sex or sex. Be honest with your partner, be honest with yourself, engage honestly and wholesomely in the sexual activities you engage in, right? There's not a list of rules around that, but don't sleep with somebody else's partner. That would be.
Yeah, that I think you gave me what I was looking for with that, just that distinction of like that question of, does this cause suffering or peace or pleasure?
And the opposites of those are 10 virtuous actions, which tend to create pleasure. So much if we are generous instead of stealing, if we protect life instead of kill it, those kind of things. Be honest instead of lie, those kind of things. Okay, and so that's the top 10. It's just like the Buddha said, here's these 10 that cause most of the problems in the world. And so, and it's not, it's kind of like, that's just what happens. So there's 3 of the body, 4 of speech, and 3 of the mind. Okay, anybody else got a little something? Then we can proceed. Okay. So he's making the point that it's the karma and the klesha, the afflictions, that give rise to the other 2. So if I didn't have misunderstandings and beliefs that don't accord with reality or conditioning, I wouldn't have these other issues. I mean, that gives rise to all of samsara.
Wouldn't you always have these physical pain?
No.
Why not?
Because you wouldn't actually be prone to this body even. So, yeah. If you have some karma left, you'd still have some stuff with the body. But if you're free of all that karma, you wouldn't. So you can become awakened and still have a little karma left over. It's called enlightenment with remainder. So you're in a physical body, but you wake up, you kind of see things, but there's still some karma left. So you still have this body. There's some pain and some aches, but you don't suffer at all. Like it's there in the body, but you're not suffering mentally, emotionally, you're not feeling it at all in that way. So my teacher, that was a real interesting thing to observe as he was going through, what would be very painful cancer and all that stuff. He's telling the nurses, how are you doing? You need some tea, his body's deteriorating, any other being, would be going through tons of suffering, but he's not related to that physical pain in any way. But the body's still deteriorating. So, but his experience of it's not, because he's not identified with the pain or the body. It's just left over. So that body still has to go through all those things. Yeah. And that's why there's an interesting thing. They use the word pain here. A little earlier, they said, as long as you're under that influence, you're subject to like physical pain. Didn't say anything about suffering. So we come back to that old saying, pain's inevitable, suffering's optional. Right? Yeah, it was an interesting choice of word. So the attributes of impermanence and dukkha are linked. So the first one, the first attribute we talked about was impermanence. And then the second one is this dukkha, this unsatisfactoriness. And they're linked. So Arya Davis says, the impermanent is definitely harmed. In other words, when something comes into being, it's going to be impermanent. So it's harmed. It's always going to fade, right? So it's not going to last. What is harmed is not pleasurable, right? It's in decay. Therefore, all that is impermanent is said to be dukkha. Galtsab explains, whatever is impermanent, such as the body, which is a maturation of polluted past karma and afflictions, is definitely damaged by factors causing disintegration, right, impermanence, and therefore produces aversion. Okay. We get a verse, I mean, that's all the wrinkle gel we can put on our face there. It's not that aging. Notice my neck's getting a little saggy here. You probably didn't notice it, Laura, but I picked up on that. Yeah, maybe I need a beard. Was that? I don't know. So it causes aversion, produces aversion. Anything affected by causes of harm whose character is to produce aversion is not pleasurable, right? Once you have aversion, it's not pleasurable. Therefore, all that is impermanent and polluted is said to be dukkha, just as anything that falls into a salt pit becomes salty. Impermanent and polluted things, such as our bodies, under the influence of afflictions and karma that cause them to disintegrate. An aged or dead body is considered undesirable and unclean, just as beautiful flowers are ugly when they decay and rot. Anything that disintegrates under the influence of afflictions and karma and produces aversion and distaste in us is by nature dukkha. It lacks a findable essence. It is empty. Seeing this leads to disenchantment with samsara and inspires us to turn our attention to liberation. Which means, when we see the impermanent nature and the very temporary fleeting pleasures of these experiences we put so much hope into, that they're not the cause of our lasting happiness, our well-being, or our self-worth. We're not going to be that worked up over. We're going to stop wasting our time on the 8 worldly concerns and spend our time more wisely on true cessations, on eliminating the causes of my mental afflictions, and naturally suffer less and actually have more joy. Otherwise, we're just decorating our prison cell in samsara with lots of nice things and maybe a lot of plaques, Yeah, put all those plaques up in our little prison cell. This award and that thing. And yeah. So as we rip all the pleasure out of Kurt's life, what we're seeking to do is replace it with lasting joy and well-being. So that's the idea here is if we don't really see how it creates the suffering, we're not going to be very motivated to stop doing it. And that's kind of the tricky business, Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, as I've mentioned many times, she says a lot of people come and ask me how to get rid of my anger. No one comes and asks me how to get rid of my greed. I like my attachments. I don't want to work on those. I want to work on my anger. Anger's very uncomfortable. We want to get rid of that. These little attachments of pleasure, I want to kind of keep those around. But they're actually what gives rise to the anger, the worry, the fear, and the resentment. And so if we start to recognize that these things that I exaggerate and misperceive as the source of my happiness are really not, well, and then I might be able to interact with them and enjoy them in ways that are not attached or averse, and use them in ways that are most meaningful for a life that's fulfilling and helpful and productive, and gives rise to ethics, concentration, wisdom opportunities of awakening. That's the shift. All right, any thoughts or discussion? We made it all the way through that second point of the 4, of the 1. We got lots of lists. First noble truth, 4 attributes, second attribute of the 4, of the 1, of the 4 noble truths, which includes the Eightfold Path. Lots of lists. So anybody out there kind of find yourself somewhat attached to outer circumstances as the source of your happiness? Probably nobody. This is probably old stuff.
Well, what's amazing to me is how how flexible that can be. Like, you might get over attachments to certain circumstances, but then there's sort of, it takes on a new costume, so it's a moving target.
You might get attached to overcoming attachments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's a tricky business too. Get very attached to, this way of being. Yeah. It can get real tricky. But if we stick to, I think, this formula of just doing our best to be as wholesome as possible, as honest as possible, engaging with others with loving kindness and compassion, and training our minds to be attentive to what we're doing, so I'm not imprisoned by all the afflictions. And then just starting to notice how everything about me is constantly supported by countless others and events and things that give me life, give me clothing, give me food, give me opportunity, that everything about me is because of countless others. I'm a part of something. I'm arising independence upon and interdependent with. Then it's more about how do I engage with this thing I'm a part of in a way that's meaningful and productive, instead of being separate from and trying to manage all that. And instead of, oh, okay, what are we learning now? And then every time I catch myself getting too caught up in something, I just develop wisdom. Nah, John, you got too caught up in that. Now, wisdom. Let's stop doing that. Let's come back. And then those big afflictions that arise, those big things that pop up again and again, they're not in that, they're showing me the path. This is what I'm here to work on. Oh, here's your path. You got to work on this. It's not something to avoid. It's, oh, John, here's, I'm just showing you the path. Here's what you have to work on. Oh, cool. Very few people have such a clear path. And it's been shown. So all of this, though, takes, the effort of being mindful. because we can talk about it, we get intellectually, but day to day, viscerally, we're so easily drawn into the 8 worldly concerns of pain and pleasure, gain and loss, praise and criticism, good reputation, bad reputation. Those become such dominant motivators instead of our values and our ethics. And so shifting that to having our primary motivator, that of wholesomeness, authenticity, and some wisdom, then yeah, maybe it's kind of like buying a good pair of boots. Probably put a good deal of thought into that, right? What's a good value? What's a good boot? Will it last? Or am I buying the boots because, they say this name and I want to look like, Jimmy over here? Probably not a good thing, but a good value to it. These will last. The price might be a little higher, but they're going to last a lot longer. It's better on the environment. Think about how you do apply wisdom in your life and then try to apply that in our other aspects. And we may catch ourselves buying the boots for the wrong reasons, or we might find a good quality boot, with good, thoughtful process. Anybody need some boots? I just gave you some tips. I'm on that just because the guy came in the other day who he actually walked Mount Sopris in the snow yesterday. Yeah, crazy. But his point is, I have a good pair of boots. And he did too. They were a pretty sturdy pair. I was thinking, wow, those things are going to last. Yeah, and he talked about he didn't spend his money. He's a pretty frugal guy, but he had good boots. Yeah. Hence the perfect example today. Because, these boots are made for walking. And that's just what I'll do. Few people caught that.
Nancy Sinatra.
Nancy Sinatra. That's right. All right.
Is that any relation to Frank?
Yeah, it's his daughter.
Oh, she wrote that?
She sang it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. I'm trying to keep our teachings and discussions get to around 7:15 or at 7:11. So 7:11.
Cool. What does that mean?
It means it's a store on the corner, I think. I don't know. Where you can spend a lot of money on a small thing at Ben and Jerry's. That's fine. Okay. One of these days, I did do better not using just cherry pie and ice cream. I used boots. So it's not always food. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have cultivated from our time together. All the things we could have been doing on a Wednesday night, we have selected to use our time in ways that can help us cultivate greater degree of wisdom and understanding in our own lives, and in that way be of greater benefit to others. So let us dedicate any and all merit and wisdom that we have cultivated from our time together here. Let us dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings, that they may be free of suffering, and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may ultimately realize our own full Buddha nature and be of greatest benefit to all. If you care to, join me in dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. All right, thank you all so much. Good to have all of you here, both online and in person. I'm getting the gallery view where I can see you all again. All right, yeah, there you are. Man, I'm missing that fan though. Here and now, sir. Good to see you. And all of you online, yeah, good to see your faces. Please be well, take good care of yourselves, and good care of those around you.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om